The veil is thin tonight. The stars align. It is time. The potion is ready. Belladonna, forged in moonlight, steeped in shadow. May it unbind us from the chains of flesh. To the broomsticks. To the sky. I ate a cloud yesterday night. It was fluffy and squishy. You people held up brooms, chased my sheep around the field, screamed about becoming fog, and then passed out in a pile of sheep fur. Back in medieval times, when science was mostly just guesswork, and medicine involved either prayer or some guy waving herbs at you, there was one plant that had an especially mystical reputation, Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade. The name is exactly as dramatic as it sounds. This plant was famous for two things, being highly toxic and causing absolutely wild hallucinations. Naturally, this made it very popular in certain medieval rituals, especially those tied to witchcraft. People weren't just eating belladonna because that could go south very quickly. Instead, they figured out a workaround, a more, let's say, creative way to absorb it. So some people, often accused of being witches, would mix belladonna with other herbs and fats to make a special potion known as flying ointments. But instead of drinking it, which, again, bad idea, they applied it directly onto their skin, more specifically, onto areas where it would absorb fast. And medieval herbalists were very aware of where the body had the best absorption points. Okay, so where should we apply this? Well, technically, the best spots are under the arms, inner thighs, and, places where the sun doesn't shine. Oh. Yeah. Some accounts claim that these ointments were rubbed onto broomsticks, which were then strategically used to absorb the potion. And this might be where the whole witches flying on broomsticks idea originally came from. If someone was in the middle of a belladonna-induced hallucination, they probably weren't just sitting calmly in a chair, they were seeing visions, feeling like they were floating, maybe even flying. And if someone happened to witness this mid-trip, well, it wouldn't take much for rumors to spread. I totally caught the snitch! That's a potato. So you're saying I didn't just win the Quidditch Cup? You've been lying on the floor for 3 hours. Belladonna's effects weren't just about floating sensations, though. It could also cause full-on vivid hallucinations, making people believe they were meeting spirits, shape-shifting, or attending mystical gatherings. And in a time when the line between medicine, magic, and total superstition was very blurry, you can see how this quickly turned into, yep, definitely, witchcraft. Now, medieval witches probably did not fly, but they experienced some very convincing out-of-body adventures thanks to their homemade potions. And once the witch trials started rolling in, any mention of flying, trippy visions, or mysterious brews was more than enough to land someone in serious trouble. Eventually, as people learned more about not accidentally poisoning themselves, belladonna stopped being the go-to plant for mystical experiences. Deep in the icy lands of ancient Siberia, where winter lasted forever and entertainment options were limited, the local shamans had a very interesting way of connecting with the spirit world. Now, these shamans were the go-to people for healing, spiritual guidance, and the occasional mind-bending journey into other realms. Their secret? A bright red mushroom with white spots called Amanita muscaria, the one that looks like it belongs in a fairy tale. This little fungus was packed with compounds that could take you on a full-blown mystical adventure. But there was a small problem. Eating it raw wasn't exactly a smooth experience. Sure, it gave you visions, but it also came with some extra side effects, like nausea, stomach cramps, and the very real possibility of spending the next few hours deeply regretting your life choices. So, the shamans, being the smart problem solvers they were, figured out a hack. Let the body do the filtering first. Basically, after consuming the mushrooms, their bodies would break down the harsher toxins while keeping all the fun compounds intact, and since nothing went to waste in ancient times, well, the filtered version was still very much effective. And this is where things get a little wild, because people caught on to this. Wait, so I can still experience the visions, but without the stomach issues? Say no more. And just like that, a new tradition was born. People started drinking the recycled version to get the same effects. And it didn't stop there. The active compounds could pass through multiple rounds of, let's say, recycling, meaning one dose could be shared several times. Bro, where did you get this? Third hand. Came from Igor's pee. But before that, it was from Old Man Uric. Vintage stuff. Humans weren't the only ones interested in these mushrooms. The local reindeer were obsessed with them. They'd eat Amanita muscaria straight from the ground, hop around with no care about the world, and yes, people even noticed that reindeer pee was still carrying the same effects. You're telling me the reindeer are also in on this? Yeah, and honestly, they seem to be having a great time. New idea. What if we skip the middleman and just, Dude, genius! The hallucinations from these mushrooms weren't just for fun, though. Siberian shamans used them for religious rituals, believing they could transport their souls to the spirit world, communicate with gods. Some scholars actually think this whole mushroom reindeer shaman situation might have played a role in the origins of Santa Claus. Siberian shamans were known for wearing red and white robes, just like Amanita muscaria mushrooms, traveling through snow-covered landscapes, and even entering homes through the roof during winter celebrations. Oh, and their reindeer? Also very enthusiastic about their magical little snacks. Dude, that reindeer just jumped like 10 feet in the air. Bro, I told you they could fly. Rudolph, is that you, buddy? Of course, over time, as different traditions blended and Christianity spread, this practice faded away. But for a while, in the snowy wilderness of Siberia, shamans and their reindeer were out there having visions, connecting with spirits, and maybe inspiring a holiday legend or two. In ancient Greece, if you needed answers to life's biggest questions, like whether to drop your entire paycheck on crypto, finally hit the gym, or just ghost that situationship that only texts you at 2 a.m., there was only one place to go, the Oracle of Delphi. This wasn't just any fortune teller on the street corner. This was the Oracle, the hotline to Apollo himself. She sat inside the Temple of Apollo, high up on Mount Parnassus, where rulers, warriors, and philosophers would travel for days just to hear her cryptic wisdom. And let's be real, her advice was top-tier mysterious. O mighty oracle, should I invade my enemies? The goat will do a backflip at sunrise, and the soup shall taste of regret. Okay, but should I bring my army or just the soup? The oracle, also known as the Pythia, didn't just come up with these poetic riddles out of nowhere. She had a little help, because as it turns out, the sacred temple was built right on top of a volcanic fissure that released mind-altering gases. Ancient Greece's most powerful prophet was basically hotboxing herself with volcanic fumes. The Pythia would sit on a tripod over a crack in the earth where gases, likely ethylene or other psychoactive compounds, would seep up from below. And once she inhaled enough of this natural mystical vapor, she'd start slipping into a trance, mumbling prophecies in a way that can only be described as an ancient Greek MAGA rally. Okay, Pythia, what's the best path for our kingdom? Make Athens great again by building a really big wall. Right. And who exactly is paying for this wall? The Spartans, of course. The priests hanging around the temple would then take these very vague mutterings and translate them into something slightly more understandable. But of course, they'd still keep it cryptic, because what's the fun in giving people straight answers? Now, before you start thinking this was just some elaborate scam, let's give credit where it's due. Ancient writers, including Plutarch, who was a priest at Delphi, described the fumes and the oracle's altered state in detail, and modern scientists, they actually found evidence of hydrocarbon gases seeping from the ground at Delphi. The Pythia wasn't just making things up, she was literally breathing in a divine science experiment, and people believed in her power. Leaders made huge decisions based on her words. Wars were started, cities were built, and empires shifted, all because one woman sat over a volcanic vent and said something poetic while vibing on ancient Greek fumes. So basically, she was the original version who could stand in front of a crowd, say complete nonsense like, windmills cause cancer, and still have an entire fan base cheering like it's the greatest wisdom of our time. Eventually, though, the oracle lost her influence. The fumes started to fade. People moved on to other sources of wisdom, and by the time the Roman Empire took over, Delphi was more of a tourist attraction than a global advice center. Somewhere in history, some indigenous groups in the Americas looked at a toad and thought, we are going to lick that. And not just any toad. Bufo alvarius, also known as the Colorado River toad or the Sonoran Desert toad, a creature that just so happened to secrete a venom containing 5-MeO-DMT, one of the most potent natural psychedelics known to humankind. They weren't just randomly picking up toads and giving them a little smooch. That's a terrible idea because the raw venom is toxic. Instead, the traditional method involved carefully extracting the venom, drying it, and then smoking it, which, when done in a ritualistic setting, was believed to induce intense visions, deep introspection, and a sense of unity with the universe. Certain indigenous groups in Mexico, particularly in the Sonoran Desert region, are believed to have used this method for spiritual and shamanic practices. Some evidence even suggests that toad-related iconography appeared in Mesoamerican cultures, possibly indicating that they knew about these effects long before modern science caught up. What if we smoke the toad? What if we don't smoke the toad? Too late. The toad just told me the secrets of the universe. Yeah? And what did it say? But of course, when word about this mystical toad experience spread, some people misunderstood the assignment. Suddenly, you had folks thinking they could just grab any toad, give it a lick, and achieve enlightenment. Alright, I licked it. When do I start seeing colors and unlocking the secrets of the universe? Dude, that's just a regular garden toad. So, no ancient wisdom? Nope. No spiritual awakening? Nah, but you might get salmonella. Great. So instead of enlightenment, I just licked a toad for no reason? In modern times, Bufo alvarius venom has gained a lot of attention, with some people exploring its effects for therapeutic and meditative purposes. However, conservationists are now warning against overharvesting these toads in the wild because, unsurprisingly, they don't enjoy being constantly poked and milked for their psychedelic properties. If there's one thing humans have mastered throughout history, it's taking ridiculous risks just for the thrill of it. And nothing proves that better than the absolutely questionable decision to eat a fish that can straight up paralyze you. The pufferfish, also known as fugu in Japan, a small, unassuming fish that looks kind of cute but is actually carrying one of the most dangerous neurotoxins in the world, tetrodotoxin. This stuff is no joke. It's 1,200 times more potent than cyanide. One wrong cut while preparing it, and you're not just having a bad meal, you're having your last meal. So, naturally, some people took one look at this situation. You know what? I still want to try it. In Japan, fugu became a delicacy centuries ago. Samurai and noblemen were especially into it, probably because eating a meal that could potentially kill you added a little extra spice to life. I mean, sure, war and duels were thrilling, but nothing quite says living on the edge like putting your dinner in charge of your survival. Why risk death for a meal? So, why risk death for honor? Because honor lasts forever. Yeah, well, so does food poisoning. When prepared correctly, fugu isn't supposed to kill you. The chefs who make it go through years of training just to learn how to cut away the toxic parts. However, if they leave just a tiny bit of that neurotoxin behind, diners can experience a mild numbness or even strange floating sensations, which, for some thrill seekers, was the whole point. Japan wasn't the only place where people were playing the pufferfish lottery. Over in the Caribbean, there were reports of people intentionally consuming small doses of pufferfish toxin, supposedly to induce a dreamlike trance state. Some even believed it had mystical properties, like unlocking hidden knowledge or entering the spirit world. I am one with the spirits. I have ascended beyond the mortal plane. I think I'm the Avatar. Yeah, and what's your bending power? Questionable food choices? Appa? Yep. Yeah, Appa's not flying, buddy. You're just poisoning yourself. Pufferfish toxin isn't just known for its mind-bending effects. In Haiti, there are theories that zombie folklore may have been inspired by it. Some believe that in rare cases, the toxin could put someone into such a deep, paralyzed state that they were mistaken for dead, only to wake up later, confused and very much alive. Of course, modern science has zero interest in turning people into temporary zombies. But fugu? That's still a thing. It remains one of Japan's most famous delicacies, and only highly trained chefs are allowed to prepare it. And despite its risks, people still order it. Partly for the taste, partly for the prestige, but mostly for that little rush of knowing that their dinner is flirting with danger. Hell, even Mr. Beast ate it. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching.